Hello and welcome back. This time we're doing something a little bit different. In this episode what I'm going to be doing is some of my personal stuff, and in this one it is a Spectra-Video SV-328 Mk2. This is part of a consignment of stuff I picked up earlier on in the year or last year. The unit I think is working fine, but what I like to do is to open all these units up, check them out, give them a good clean, and to be happy that they're all going to be working when I put them back away. So hopefully you will find some interesting information out about the Spectra-Video during the video, and hopefully we don't have any major problems like I have had in the past. But anyway, sit back, relax, and let's get on with it, shall we? Well, welcome. And this is part of a collection I did for our local Facebook group, New Zealand Vintage Computers. And it was a chappie part the way up to the North Island, because I actually live in a country, New Zealand. And in New Zealand it's actually two islands. There's a North Island and a South Island, which is separated by a strait in between, a strait of water. And so this chappie lived about 4 hours away from me, and he was getting to the point that he needed to downsize and get rid of his stuff because his eyesight was failing, and he was just getting on in years, like most of us collectors are these days. And he wanted it all to go to good families. So what we decided to do in the group was we will get one of us to collect all the gear, and everybody is to donate to him what they feel is fair for the gear they got. But there was the likes of there were Acorns, there was some early Australian machines in there, bits and pieces, Commodore 64s, 64 gear, there were tapes for all sorts of manner of systems, some I haven't seen in a very long time. And of course there was a lot of Spectra-Video gear in there which I was very interested in. So I brought it all back, put it all into its groups, and displayed it to the computer collection of guys, and they all decided who wanted what. There was Spectrums, there was the micro drives, there was all sorts of gear in amongst there, ZX81s. So what we did is we broke it all up so that it was fair for everybody, and somebody got something. And a lot of it went out, and people were very happy with what they got. There were some very rare finds in amongst it that a few of them got as well, so I hope they did give him a fair amount for it when they got their gear. But he was just happy for it to find a new home. But this is one of the units I got off him. This is the Spectra-Video 328 Mk2 in its original box. The box is a little damaged, just a little tab that this piece goes into is actually off, but it's actually in the box, so it's not too bad. I can probably attach that somehow. The thing is with these, they are not as common to come in the boxes. You would generally just get the unit on its own. But even harder to find are the Mark 1s in the 318, 328 in the box, but also with all the manuals, the RF unit, which a lot of them got lost or left out, and the polystyrene. Because sometimes you'll get the box, but the polystyrene's not in it. So sort of things you've got to look out for when you want to collect this sort of stuff. But if you're looking at buying something to plug in, play the games, and do that sort of thing, then you don't need the box. You just need to make sure it's working okay. There will be some follow-up videos coming for this. In the collection I also got the MSX add-on for the Spectra-Video 328, 318, so they can play the basic MSX1 games on these machines. There's also a ColecoVision adapter, which I do have, and I've had for quite a few years, that I will also be doing a video on that as well. Along with quite a few others, there's a TXZ Dreno, which I am going to build for you guys, with also information on the SVI CAS system, plus there is also an MSX add-on cartridge for these that turns them into a basic MSX computer, and you can run cassette games from them. So we'll see how all that goes later on, but those are down the track. So for this one, we will open this up and have a look, and we'll see if she's all working. Okay, so as you can see there, the main base unit is in here and the power supply. These units in the later days, I'll just flip it over and show you, they came out with RF built in. So you had an RF modulator for a TV, then you had video and audio off the main board. This slot here was for the proprietary floppy drives. The proprietary tape drive, and this was your slot expansion where you can get expander cards and things like that, which I'll show you over the course of time in the machines. The other thing with the Mark IIs is they had this red and black label on them, and the 328s did. The 318 Mark II had a similar label, but it was yellow and blue, and I'll put a picture on here for you so you can see it. But that was the Mark II 318s. These, a lot of them faded over the years and peeled off and that. I did get some reproductions made of these. So if anyone is looking for some, get in contact with me either on the YouTube website or via the Facebook group, and I can sort you out with that. And I have the 318 and 328 ones. That's just these big ones here, not the fancy one on the side. That's a little bit expensive to reproduce. So anyway, so now we've got all this here. What I will do is, these power supplies are a dual power supply. Now they have a 16 volt AC and they have a 9 volt AC. Now why they do that is they're taking the AC voltage and internally they're dropping them down to the 12 and 5 volts, and they need 16 volts AC so they can get the plus and minus 12 volts. Because back in the day, a lot of the older gear was running dual voltage RAM and dual voltage ROMs, because that's what it was built like back in the day. So, and a lot of the new stuff now doesn't use it. So that is why when you look at these and you think, oh, why they got this weird plug on them and that plug looks very similar to quite a few others of the time, like the ColecoVision and a few others, but it is not the same. Don't get them mixed up. The voltages are not the same, or they may not be wired the same. So just make sure it is a proper Spectra-Video one. If not, on the web you can find information on the power out for the pins on these. So what we'll do is we'll plug this in. This is 240 volts for my native voltage where I am, same as Australia's, 220, 240 volts. So what I'll do is I will plug this in to the power supply, and we'll just check the voltages on the end of that to make sure that that's the right voltage before we plug it into this, because there's no way we want this to throw 20 odd volts or 30 volts into here and then causes more problems down the track. Alright, so I'll just plug all this in and get the multimeter and we will have a check. Okay, so I've got it all plugged in and ready to go. Got the multimeter, we'll put that somewhere where we can see it. So it's set to AC, because you've got to remember these are AC voltages coming out of this plug. So the two small plugs together are 1 pin, and so the two close ones are 9 volts AC, and the two wider ones are the 16 volt AC. So put one in one hole and one in the other. So that's reading 9.7 volts AC, so that's okay. And we'll do the two wider ones. and that's 17.2. So that's unloaded. You've got to remember that is unloaded on the meter. You might be thinking, oh, that's a bit high, but the voltages always are slightly higher when they're unloaded because there's no resistance on it. So they always do read slightly high. So now we got that sorted. Now what the next thing to do would be to plug in a video and audio lead, and then I will plug the power into it. Now what I will do is I'll show you those really basic pieces, but I'm going to have to move the camera around too because the screen is over behind me, so I'm going to have to put it on the tripod on the desk, so there will be a transition there, so just bear with me for a sec. Okay, so I'm just going to plug in the video and the audio now. And on the two plugs on the bottom, the video is the left hand side one and the audio is the one next to the cassette port. And the very top one is your RF, which I'm not using for a TV. It's a poor output compared to the video, so I just use the video and put it into a Commodore 1084S monitor that I've had for years. So we just plug this in, and it can only go in one way. To plug that in the side. One thing to keep a notice on with these is sometimes the sockets tend to get very sloppy, and just keep an eye on that, because if that's the case, you may find that this will cut in and out if you move it. You can fix it sometimes by putting a bit of tape around it and then putting it in just so it tightens it up. Just see how you go. And of course that's the power switch on the side to turn it on. So what I'll now do is I'll just change the camera. So just hold it here with me for a sec. Okay, so here we are. I've got it set up on the side, so you can see there's the power lead going in and the switch is there. Now all things going well, the power light, which is on the keyboard here, should come on. If you do find these come on and the caps light comes on but won't go off, there's a fault internally in these, and 9 times out of 10 it is actually a fatal fault with the ULA, which there's no real information that's been made available for those. There have been a few people trying to work on a replacement, but the best thing is to reverse engineer an old one before they went to the ULAs and probably make something new up. But anyway, so there we are. So that's all set, ready to go. So what I will then now do is I will turn this on. And the power light is on. Oh, sorry, you need to try and see that. But yes, the power light is on. And the caps lock key comes on and off, which means that's working fine. So now what I will do is we will now look at the monitor, get you in view, and now what I will do is I will now zoom in and I'll turn the monitor on. And then now what we will do is we will zoom in on the monitor, and you can see the computer actually firing up. Now once this fires up and it seems to be working fine, I think we'll disassemble the machine, and it looks quite tidy, but sometimes you don't know what gets inside these when they're being put in storage. So I think we'll open the machine up and show you inside it and give it a bit of a clean. So just hang on a sec while I zoom you in. Okay, so there we are. So now we're going to switch it on, and I'll turn the volume up so you can hear what's happening. And there we go. So there we have the Spectra-Video extended basic version 1.1 booted up on the screen. So this all seems to be fine. So we can do color, and we can change the color of the screen. Go say 15,2, and there we go. Yep. So we've changed the background to green with green border. So go again, and we can go 15,1, 5, and there we go. So I mean, that's all working fine. So anyway, what we'll do is we will turn it off and have a look inside. Right, so we've got the machine there. I've unplugged. I moved all the cables out the way. You didn't want to see me doing that. So what we do is you turn it over, and a lot of these will have handwritten labels on them. Now, this is from the factory when they got done. So if that's on there, you're a 1-up. You have all your passcodes on here. The nice thing with these is that they don't have security labels over the screw holes, which a lot of the later ones did with the Commodores and so forth, and they had those labels, and then people knew you'd been inside and opened them up and tampered with them. So these didn't. The other nice thing was the channel select for the TV, depending on what region you were in, are on the bottom here, so you can't accidentally knock them and change them. A lot of them for certain countries were actually set, and that switch was taken out, which this one is on this model. So what we're going to do is we'll look at, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 screws to take out on the base of this, and then that's to get into it. Okay, one of the other things to remember is that on the bottom, depending on the world where you are, this has got a P on it, which means it's for the PAL system, which is New Zealand, Australia, parts of Europe, etc. So that's telling you what the video system it's running for tuning it in to the TVs and the monitors, etc. If you're in other parts of the world, it'll probably have NTSC or whatever is in your part of the world that it needs to be. So we got those screws off, so I'll just find a container to put those in. Sorry about that, guys, I just had to go and grab some containers, put these screws in. So put them in there, we'll stick them up the back out of the way so they're nice and safe. And these, there's not a big learning curve to opening them up. You just got to be gentle. These, as of in the day, they had a plastic ribbon cable, a bit like the CX5M we did, but these, as I'm just about to show you, you do not lift the lid right up. You gently lift it up, so you can get like about 2 fingers in between the base and the between the base and the lid, and that is because their cable is soldered to the keyboard and the main board. So now what I'll do is I'll just gently move this back, and there you can see it just down in here. I'll just get something to point with, and this is it here. Now that sounds like wire. Well, it is. That's tinned wire through a molded clear plastic, and these are the 2 tracks for the keyboard. So the problem with these is that if you pull them too much, and it's only like hot glue that's on top of these on the board, and they also did it over the back. Move a little bit over the back here as well. It's done the same between the main board and the video board. They did the same thing here, and as you can see there, that's just got like all this plastic glue on it, which is terrible stuff. And some people find that this, over time, it actually becomes conductive, so can cause a problem. What I do with these is, I'm not going to do it on this one, but it will be a later video that I will do with this, is I take these off, and then I put a L-shaped header pin on this, and then I actually solder a piece of 40-way ribbon cable, which I take off the tracks I don't need on it, and I think it's about a 30-odd pin, and I solder that to the keyboard, and then I put a male header on the other end, and plug it in on this side. So that way, and if I need to, I can detach the keyboard and take it away. It was something I heard about quite a lot of years ago and that, but never really found much on it. And probably 12 years ago or more, when I got one of these, I started doing them. But as I say, this is one I picked up, and I haven't had this one apart. But looking inside, it looks very, very clean. That's your video processor under there. That has they have a heatsink on them, because as I was saying in the MSX one, these TMS99X8, so my X just stands for, it might be a 1.8, a 2.8, a 2.9. They do get hot. Now if they get too hot, they'll actually die. And the other problem these have is they were very susceptible to over voltage. Even if it's 2 volts over, that will actually kill the chip. The other thing was, as I was saying, is temperature as well. So these were very vulnerable, and that's why you need to check your power supply before you plug them in, because the last thing you want is 15 volts or more coming into the board and frying this chip. They're a pain to get out. Once you do, what you got to do is they've got to come out. You need to really put a socket in here, and if you can get another chip, which are still available, you can pop it in, and if it ever happens again, it's easy to get it in and out. The other thing I noticed with this is that when I opened it, this is the ULA I was telling you about. That let's move it into shot a bit more for you guys. The ULA that I was telling you about, that dies on them, and it looks like this one's had a replacement at some stage. So I'm really happy that it's in a socket, because some of these, taking them out of the boards, you can actually kill the ULAs as well. So I can't do a lot with this as it is. What you can do with these is you can actually bring the keyboard forward, and there you can see it's actually attached to the keyboard. But as I say, you've got to be gentle, because these are just soldered through holes in the boards, these wires, and then hot glued onto the top here. So if you pull them backwards and forwards too much, it's going to break and come off, and then you're to the point where you're going to have to make something to fix the problem. And that's why I tend to, these are very rigid, and that's why I tend to find, take them off, put a ribbon cable on to a connector down on this board down the bottom. You could do it the other way around if you like. I just find this is too close at the front. It's very narrow at the front here where the keyboard goes. So that's why I find to do it on the motherboard, because there's more room back here. So that's one thing that needs to be done. But as I said, on this one, I'm not going to worry about it. When you go down that track, there are ways of doing these sorts of things. And I think this one doesn't look too bad. So what we might do is take the keyboard unit off, and to do that, there's screws around the outside we've got to do on the black part of the plastic that holds it to the lid, and that makes it a bit easier to move. So what we'll do is we'll go through there, and we'll take that off just so we can check the keyboard to make sure it's all clean underneath. And as with this one, is like some of the other ones, you can see they've got little wee self-tapping Phillips screws in them, so it's not one of these nasty membrane style keyboards that like the MSX one had with the steel backing on it. This shouldn't be too bad a one to do. So I'll do that. So we'll undo these screws, and then I'll show you taking this off. Again, it's just being gentle to do it. Don't be too rough with them and in a rush, because that's when problems happen. There is a little bit of muck inside here, but it's, in all honesty, it's a pretty good nick. So alright, so I will do that. I'll get the screwdriver and we'll start taking this apart, and I'll be back with you shortly. And as you may find, there's going to be always one in the group, and it's right in between these two cables, just over under here. You might have just set just around there by the screwdriver tip. Oh, try and get that one there. It's right in between these two. They've split the cable, which is nice. I think some of these very early ones weren't split, so you might have to cut down between it to get to it. So just be wary of that. You might think, oh, there's no more, and try to rip it out and break it. So yeah, that's, just watch for that. Right, so now we're ready. So we just gently lift this up, and as you can see, it comes off in one unit, and we can take this big piece of plastic out of the way, which gives us a bit more room on the bench. So now with this, we gently rock it over. So now we've got a little bit more room. Now if we wanted to, we could start pulling this all to pieces. I don't realistically think it's worthwhile doing. Looking at it, it is very tidy. There's no real corrosion on the board. So I think I might just take the back off this back off the keyboard, so I can give it a clean, and then once I've given it a clean, we'll put it back together, and we might chuck a couple of games in it, and see how it goes. Alrighty. So I'll just get to just unscrewing this. I won't let you sit there and watch me undo all of these screws, because there is, yeah, I don't know if you want to count them, but I don't think you want to sit there and watch me unscrew all of these out of the hole of this keyboard. Alright, so you'll be back with me when I'm just about ready to take it off. Okay guys, so I'm just about to take this last screw out now. So yeah, you just need to be mindful and gentle with these things. As I said, excuse me, as I said, these are not the same as the MSX plastic membrane, and some of the Spectrums and that had the same thing. A lot of people back in the day bagged Spectra-Video and said they were junk, and they cut corners and they did all sorts of things. But as you'll see when I lift this off, I would prefer this type of keyboard to something like the MSX that came out, like the Yamaha did. So now we gently lift this up, and you can see, yeah, it's got a bit of muck under there, but see, it's got this rubberized key set up in it. Now these are domed with carbon, they've got little carbon buttons under them. So when you push that button down on the keyboard, when that goes down, it shorts the contacts under it. Now you do have to be careful with these, and that if you push them down too hard, these are going to pop out and go all over the bloody place for you, but you don't want to do that. So I'll just put that somewhere safe out of the way. So as I was saying with this, now you just got to be a little gentle pulling this up, but it's not glued down or anything, it's just through static, it sticks on there. And we just peel it off gently, and as you can see, there's all the gold contacts underneath there, and under here you can see those little carbon buttons. Now as you can see underneath this as well, it's a bit yellow. I'll try and bring you down. I've zoomed in a little bit more, but I'll bring this up closer so you can actually see it. There's a bit yellow on the back and that. This is why I like to take the keyboard, gets the worst of everything spilt over it and so forth. That's why I like to look at these first and just make sure the machine's working, and then if the machine's working, take this off, give it a gentle clean, and using anti-static wipes or clean wipes or something like that, just to give it a good clean. Isopropyl you can use, and paper towel. But yeah, just gently peel this off, and just be careful of the two LEDs, because one of these is your caps lock and the other one is your power light. Just over the top of that, and then that's it, it comes off. And where those two LEDs are, if we flip this back over, that's where that bit of black tape is. And what that is doing, that's just insulating the backs of those LEDs so they don't short on anything underneath. But now you can see under here, this is where all the wires come through that get soldered on for the keyboard here. So this is like when I go to change them, I desolder all these pins, then I solder in the header wire, and these are from here to here, they're pin to pin in line from one to the other. So I take this off first, so then I can get this out, solder the wire on, put the header pin on. Then all I've got to do is just the female end, and then I solder the male header pin on this end, and then I just matter plug it in, unplug it when I want to take it out. It makes life a lot easier. That would have been a nicer option if they had done it back then, but they didn't. So I mean, they did cheap out on the type of cable, but it's not a flimsy type of cable. It's quite a hard cable, but then it's easy to break the wires too when you see how hard they are to bend. So what I'll do is I'll just give this a bit of a clean for now. What I might do with this, I might stop this video here for tonight. I'll have a think about it, and I'll see if I've got any ribbon cable and header pins. And what we might do is we might come back with a part 2 to this. And what we'll do is we'll put the cable in on this. We'll put the new cable in here with the header pins, and we'll put it all back together. We'll fire it up and we'll put a couple of games through it. I'm pretty sure I've got a couple of cartridges for this as well, which they were the binary programs. They were the really good stuff. A lot of the cassette tapes were good. Some of them were good quality. Some of them were, yeah, you know, sort of so-so. Some of the homebrew stuff was better than some of the commercial stuff. But yeah, no, I think we'll do that, eh? I think I'll leave it here. So I'm just going to give it a bit of a clean. So all I'm going to do is I'm just going to use some of these universal wipes, and that's just to get all this brown muck and everything off. As I was saying to you, like you can see it on there, and if you turn it over, you can actually, you might be able to see it slightly yellowing on that other side as well. So I just like to go through and clean them, and then what I will do is each of these carbons, I'll just get some isopropyl and cotton buds. Usually just pick up a jar of cotton buds. I'll use that with some isopropyl, clean all these tabs. After I've cleaned this, I'll isopropyl and clean all the gold contacts as well. So you want them nice and clean. You don't want any films on them, because that's when you're going to get intermittent connections. So I'll just do all that, and then what we'll do is in part 2 we might just turn around and put a disconnectable keyboard cable on. What do you think about that? Alright, so I'll leave you in the dark here, and you can think about what we're gonna do. Catch you next time. Right, just a real quick thing here for you guys is you can actually see the rubber membrane's cleaned up really, really well. But I need to point out to you, you'll see these are divided into sections. So each of these rubber pads are in sections. Now this is a very fine line that's moulded into these sections down through here. Don't tear them. If you tear them, they're a pain to line up with the tabs underneath. So be gentle with them and try not to tear or break those if you can, okay? Just something I thought I'd better mention you just as we're signing off here. But anyway, yeah, just thought I'd let you know that. So be gentle with them when you're cleaning them. Don't get too rough and tear them, okay? Alright guys, we'll catch you next time.